Nick Nurse with some pretty significant comments about Pascal Siakam today. And we've talked about this before. The difference in coverage and reaction, Maple Leafs and every other team in the city. But I also think you can understand the difference between the reaction to what Nick Nurse had to say about Siakam and his foul trouble today. And we'll play the clip in a second. Because they have a championship ring. Like, Nick Nurse can get away with saying anything, doing anything. You can reason with it. You sit there and you say, I understand what he's doing. He's trying to knock the rust off. He doesn't want these guys feeling too good about themselves. You know, the championship hangover, all that kind of stuff. Siakam is beloved here, yet he's not sulking about these comments. He understands he's the most important player on the team, if not right there with Kyle. And if he's on the bench because he's fouling out, that's not going to help anybody.
Well, what do you think Popovich, like his whole career, he's got street cred. And
that's what happens when you win.
Yeah, he could not get away with half of the garbage that he says.
Right. And
half of it.
He calls out his own players.
That's right.
Popovich. And Belichick calls out Brady all the time. If you don't have rings, man, people are going to just... Look at what Babcock's going through. Babcock has a ring, but it's not here.
John Tortorella can say whatever, but how many jobs has John Tortorella gone through?
Babcock was starting to question, when did you get that ring and how long ago?
Exactly.
And what is your street cred right now?
Here's what Nick Nurse had to say earlier today about Pascal Siakam.
Josh, he hasn't been very smart, if you want me to be honest with you. Most of those have been fouls. And they're touch fouls that they're not calling on everybody, and they're not calling every trip up and down. But if you go back and by the letter of the law, they say, hey, he's got two hands on him. So he's got to take the two hands off him. And that's what we're working on. Just we're pouring over the film. We're showing him, just a little bit. And that's okay. I mean, it's something he can change quickly. I'm expecting him to change it tomorrow night.
I love that comment. I love it.
It's honesty. It's just, it's real. It's right there in front of you.
Yeah, and it's a message to Siakam because I didn't hear, that was Lewinberg, I'm assuming, that asked him the question. And Josh was on here yesterday, and we were talking about it. And Josh is not alone. A lot of people have been pointing out that Siakam is not getting the same calls that other stars around the league have gotten historically in the NBA. And now he's got a max contract, so he should be officiated the same way every other max contract player in the league should be officiated. And that's his head coach saying, don't bank on what your paycheck is telling you. Just because you got a max deal, just because you got a title and most improved player, don't think you've made it yet.
You keep plodding along until you get that credibility.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what he's saying.
Yeah,
that's exactly what he's saying.
Those players, they paid their dues, and they played a certain amount of way, or a certain way for a certain amount of time, and then they get that street cred where it's like, you know what, you're going to get away with that. But he's not there yet.
He's not there.
So put your time in.
And keep in mind, this is a guy who's still learning, as Nick. He's only played basketball this is now his 8th year. He's never played basketball before that. 8 years he's played, so he's still developing. And that was a knock on him before in the way he plays. He's a little reckless at times. Plays a little reckless, but he's still his learning curve was so steep to get in. And I think that was more of a comment about Nick upping the ante on him. By the way, Nick Nurse also called out OG Anunoby earlier in the season, in the preseason, and on defense. And I think that's what, championship coaches do. I think that's what teams do is, you can't be satisfied. And by the way, if it's not just Nick Nurse, it's other players. I'm sure Kyle Lowry is on Pascal Siakam. And by the way, he's a sponge, this guy. This guy's incredibly bright.
He understands it. He's not going to sulk.
He will not sulk.
Nurse said right at the end of that clip, I expect it to change tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Like it's going to sink in and he's going to get it. And what you understand is that Nurse has been telling him this behind closed doors before he decided to speak on it publicly. But when you look at the perception, what a championship ring does in terms of the market, like if Babcock said the exact same thing about Matthews, half the city would say, why are you calling your star out? What do you know? You haven't done anything here. How about change the system? If Charlie Montoyo said that about Vladdy Guerrero Jr., you'd say, who the hell are you, Charlie Montoyo? That's the poster boy. Like, Nick Nurse, I love the comment. I agree with the comment. But I will admit, probably to my own hypocrisy, if it was Babcock or Montoyo talking about that, about a different player publicly, I might have a different reaction. But he's won a championship. And it's like he can kind of get away with whatever he wants to get away with because he is using the media to call out his star player. Like he could have backed him up.
The player perspective from it is like can't you just have that conversation and say, you know what, I've talked to the player, we're going to figure it out. But like you said, when you win a championship, you can just say, you know what, blah, 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 and it's all cool.
I don't think there was anything incriminating on that comment.
No, but he could have.
No, he's speaking the truth.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
like, he's got to fix it.
What I'm saying
I
is,
thought he was kind of actually at the end said, hey, he's that kind of player. That's the kind of guy Nick is when he talks to. Like, he'll give you the gory details early, and then he gives you kind of that happy ending later.
remember last year he called out Kawhi about halfway
Yeah.
through the season, and people were like, "What are you doing, man? We're trying to court this guy." I'm not saying that this is a new leaf that Nick Nurse is showing necessarily.
No.
All I'm saying is he could have protected him through the media differently.
Like a lot of coaches do.
Some guys would have been, "Hey, I don't love what the refs are doing. We're working on some stuff." But he was blunt. He was honest. He was speaking publicly about his star player and the fact that he doesn't like the kind of foul trouble he's putting himself in.
There are a lot of coaches that do that in cocoons. I don't know, O-Dog, if you had coaches like that were. I think a lot of coaches also are extra sensitive with the media. Nick Nurse has never been like that. Like, he's, the ordinary guy. He'll sit with you. He's like a hot stove guy. He has his own opinions. He'll protect his players and if it was egregious or something, off color perhaps, or even something that he felt was damaging to that player's reputation. But I don't think anybody, particularly on the basketball, there has been no reason for that. A few years ago when the team was really sucked, and there were some players on the team that were, playing matador defense and not bringing it every night, I can see a coach being sensitive to the media. Because then you got, then you got to kind of bring everybody in, then it's a media war. I can never see Nick ever being involved in something like that. Our buddy Sam Mitchell, Sam was like that.
Sam would have a very different approach.
Sam and I got at it a lot when I was working and on sideline. Why'd you say that? Why'd you say that?
Well, and Dwayne Casey, by all accounts, he'd say one thing with the mics on, and then he might talk to you a little bit differently without the cameras and the
Nick's
mics
a straight
on.
shooter. I'm telling you, he's one of the straightest shooters I've ever seen as a coach in any sport.
But I appreciate, again, that he's not going to allow his player to cop out. He's not
John
gonna
Gibbons
say,
was like that a little bit too.
Yeah. Yep.
Say, hey, whatever.
No, listen, this was nothing offside. He didn't say anything out of sorts, and it's something I think if you're watching it, it allows you to say, okay, that's a good point. I don't need the refs to be hooking up Siakam. Pascal's got to put himself in a better position to succeed and stay on the court. It's just, I guess what stood out to me is the difference between what the Raptors can say and do and how we would react to it compared to the Maple Leafs, definitely right now, and even the Blue Jays. And they deserve that type of leeway, and they deserve that type of perception and reaction because of what they've accomplished. And also what you hope that they're going to continue to accomplish, because you don't want to see them become complacent or expect that the refs or the league are going to do them any favors. It's not going to happen.